Next stop, Puntledge IR2. So where were we? We're on the mouth of the Courtenay River, so we're going to paddle upstream. IR2 is about 4 kilometers upstream from right here at the junction of the Tsolum and the Puntledge River. It was allocated as an IR back in the 1870s, specifically because folks were growing potatoes there. It was obviously a settlement before that, but at that point in time, it was a big fenced potato patch. Sometimes people call it the potato patch site, these old archaeologists who worked there. This is the lower campground area. Condensory Bridge would be up here, and the Puntledge River would be just behind that tree line there. Now, KFN became aware of some archaeological remains in this vicinity around 2016. I remember walking around it with Corey and then with Richard. And it seemed like a bit of an unusual place. Clearly the junction of 2 salmon rivers, it's a rich location, high probability for finding things. But it was probably a little more prolific than we anticipated. And by this I mean, look how they've only had to excavate like 1 centimeter below the grass before they hit archaeological deposits there, right? You pretty much just peel off the grass and then you're in pure shell midden. So while now this floods every single year, back then people were living, our radio dates span from 350 AD to 750 AD, perfectly comfortable in this area that floods every single winter now. So certainly then it wasn't flooding. One of my original ideas in investigating this archaeological site is that maybe it would be like more oriented towards inland hunting or gathering root plants and cooking things like that because you're sort of upstream a little bit. But no, I was completely wrong. It's chock-a-block full of shell, salmon, and herring. And herring actually outnumber salmon something like 100 to 1 in our excavations here. So certainly the salmon are coming up the river. You can spear them right offshore or net them or have a weir set up. But herring don't come up that river. So every single herring was caught out in the harbor here, brought up the river, almost certainly in a canoe. The site consists of 10,000 cubic meters of shell midden, right? And the nearest shellfish is 4 kilometers downstream. So every single one of those clams was thrown in a basket, thrown in a canoe and paddled upstream and then cooked and dumped here. So the shell midden deposits extend like way out to this tree here, then into the bush there where there are a few of these sort of smaller shell mounds. So I was surprised that there was such a strong marine focus for this settlement. I expected something more inland focused, but it's always great to be wrong. But the most remarkable thing of this site is that the most commonly recovered artifact type are these funny little incised pebbles. Typically, when you excavate a village site, the most commonly recovered artifact type would be like a flake, like one little resharpened, unmodified flake that was used to cut up something and chucked away. We usually find those at a rate of 100 times more than anything else. But here we actually have it's actually more than 400 of these objects here compared to maybe only 100 stone tools from the entire site. So these little pebbles, I apologize that I don't have a scale bar here, but the biggest one, like this one for example, is about as big as the palm of my hand, and the smaller ones are about the size of my thumb or one of those like pink erasers you had in elementary school. And they're made of, the pebbles themselves are this siltstone, fine sandstone stuff that's just tumbling down the Puntledge River. Like if you go there to Puntledge Park, you can see these unmodified pebbles all over the place. But people selected a particular shape of these and then incised them very finely with a little stone flake, probably a little quartz crystal flake. Sometimes with a very high degree of skill and craftsmanship, like that's not the first time that person sat down and did that. And then sometimes not so much, where it very well could be the first time someone sat down and did that. These are really rare elsewhere in the region. There's 2 other sites in BC that have any number of them and 1 site in Washington. And essentially otherwise they're just absent, like they don't exist. And even at that location, you know, I've spent a lot of time on IR2. You don't find them everywhere on IR2. You find them from one little area, maybe twice the size of this gym, like one little corner of this 300-acre reserve. You find these, and you find them from those lowest layers, 380, up to these upper layers, 780. No real change in time. None of them have a face. There's 200 of them, and not a single one shows eyes. None of them are obviously male, but some of them are explicitly female. There's absolutely girl parts on some of them where they're letting you know that it's a she rather than an it. And to me, interpreting these images is pretty tricky. I think some of the things are quite clearly indicating like woven garments, capes or blankets that people are wearing. But really commonly, if not the most common motif that we see on them, is this sort of parted hair and then ponytail motif. And I think this image of an Hadashat girl taken in the 1890s is probably the best analog for what I think I see on most of these pebbles anyway. And so this girl we know was going through her puberty seclusion ceremony where she was locked sort of off by herself and not supposed to look at anybody. She's got her hair braided and beaded. 1 month later in the ceremony, she's no longer a girl, she's a woman. And she has this really distinctive, it looks like a comb, but it's a wooden or bone scratcher. So she doesn't scratch her skin too much and cause blemishes or disfiguration. And so she's, when you read the account that goes along with this, girls, when they're undergoing these ceremonies, they're not supposed to look at anyone in the face, they're supposed to look down, especially not looking at a man in the face, like that's the most taboo of all. So I suspect the photographer here paid her or grandma, money to look up and look for the picture. If she wasn't looking up, I think she'd look exactly like this, right? If she's looking down, this is where my mic jumps, right? If you're looking down, you don't see a face, you see the hair, and you see the little scratcher, and you see the ponytails. So my idea is, and I've convinced myself at least, that these pebbles were used as a part of this family or this group of people's ceremonies, transforming girls into women. I don't know if it's just something that family did or those two houses did. We don't find them anywhere else. Or maybe that women came to that place specifically for some training or for some knowledge or for some practice. I don't know why, but they seem to be making these things, sometimes rubbing them together, sometimes the image is just almost entirely rubbed off. So maybe they're rubbing them on themselves or rubbing them against another rock, and then leaving them behind. So, it's not like it was super valuable and you had to carry it with you for the rest of your life. It just goes in the corner of the house. So I don't know what it is about this location. I've had people tell me that for Comox people, this is the junction of the two rivers there is a really important place for women to do their spiritual bathing. There's something special about the two waters coming together there and the sort of tidal flux that comes right up to that junction as well. I don't really understand how that stuff works, but if that is historically, the right place for women to do that stuff, maybe that goes back 1,500 years as well. I wouldn't be terribly surprised. And if someone's got a better idea what these are all about, I'm all ears, but I've yet to be convinced of anything else.